Well, of course, the bipolar Pittsburgh fan base wants to support Mason Rudolph now. And Coach Kenny Gajewski, we love you, man. You preach it. We've got your back, especially when you're telling people that if they don't want to back the orange and black, they can go ahead and pack their bags and back their little happy ass on up out of here.
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Howdy, y'all, and hello, all. Welcome back to Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily stop for all things Cowboy and Cowgirl related. My name is Cody Stovall. I want to thank you kindly for stopping by to make this your first listen here on Locked On Oklahoma State. We're available on every single podcasting platform as well as visually on YouTube. You know, you can find me on Twitter at AllDayOState. We appreciate you tuning in today. You could be anywhere, but you choose to make this your first listen. So I'm greatly appreciative. Let's just jump right on into this, ladies and gentlemen. I have been saying for quite some time now, I know I might be slightly crazy, that Mason Rudolph is an NFL quarterback. Not only that, he should be somebody that's an integral part of a team moving forward. Have I ever said that he's somebody that's going to go completely light it up and be a franchise guy? No, I haven't. He could be a Matt Flynn. He could be a Seneca Wallace or a Chase Daniel, but I think that he's got more talent than Seneca Wallace. I think he has more talent than a Chase Daniel or even a Matt Flynn. So if he's going to be able to continue to carve out a role in Pittsburgh, good for him. But wasn't it just this time last year that Pittsburgh fans hated Mason Rudolph? They thought he was a waste of a roster spot. A lot of people were saying that he shouldn't even be in the league whatsoever, which is stupid because as your starting quarterback, he has you a winning record, right? When Mason Rudolph is on the field, traditionally, it's a decent product. I would say that there's some offensive limitations. 2 years ago, all the Steelers want to do was check down, check down, check down, check down, check down. A lot of people want to say that's on Mason Rudolph, but I don't buy that entirely because Mason Rudolph did what at Oklahoma State? I mean, yeah, played a lot of games, won a lot of games, broke some records, did some crazy stuff. But other than that, he was a deep ball scientist. He was a master of launching the football. Yeah, I mean, we had some good receivers to throw to, but you're trying to tell me that there's receivers in the NFL that cannot do what Marcel Aitman was able to do, what James Washington was able to do, what Dylan Stoner was able to do, what Tyron Johnson was able to do? Come on, man. I think if you gave Mason Rudolph the opportunity to dial it up because, I don't know, that's kind of what he does, you'd have seen a little bit of a different product. You wanted to dink and dunk, and then he got forced into this box of somebody that could only dink and dunk. And again, it makes no sense. He knew he's an air it out type of guy. He knew the long ball was his cup of taters. So you're telling me he went to Pittsburgh and said, hey, guys, I'd rather just check it down and do a bunch of 3-yard slants. Cool? No. Which is precisely why I've been saying he hasn't got a fair shake in Pittsburgh. He needs to get the flip out of Pittsburgh. Like, Kenny Pickett is too cool of a story. He's a local Pittsburgh guy, right? Played at Pitt, got drafted by the Steelers. Like, the storylines write themselves with Kenny Pickett. So even if, and I'm not saying Mason Rudolph's better than Kenny Pickett. I'm not saying that. But even if Mason Rudolph were to outperform Kenny Pickett, it wouldn't matter. He's the prodigal son returned home, which is, again, why I'm saying this is a waste of space. Like, it's great that Mason Rudolph has decided to, essentially bet on himself and prove that he can be a guy. And we all know that he's one injury away from being the guy because there is nobody that I can find that is legitimately talking about Mitch Trubisky being a better quarterback than Mason Rudolph, which is stupid because that wasn't the conversation last year. Conversation last year was Mitch was better, even though you could see that wasn't the case. Mitch Trubisky is not better than Mason Rudolph. He has never been better than Mason Rudolph. The problem is Mason Rudolph hasn't had the opportunities afforded to him. Now, what I do think he's doing right now in this preseason that's getting all these fans in Pittsburgh like, oh, yeah, Mason Rudolph's definitely the number 2 guy. Oh, yeah, Mason Rudolph can be in the NFL for another 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years. Like, this is not the conversation that's been happening Mason Rudolph's entire career in Pittsburgh. I hate it for him because even if he's a career backup, he's somebody that can be relied upon. There are career backups that make monumental decisions that end up leading to a team making a playoff run or helping somebody win a playoff game. It happens. And Mason Rudolph has put himself in a position to see that. I just hate it for him that it's taken this long. And I also hate it because I'm not going to lie, I was watching a lot of Pittsburgh games when they got Mason and James Washington. I was like, all right, cool. I can get down with this. I don't think James got put in very many spots that were accurate either. Guys, you got to remember, when Mason came in, before he ever stepped foot on the Pittsburgh Steelers training facilities, there was already bad blood between Big Ben and, the Oklahoma State connection and this and that and the other. James Washington had his growing pains. He's continuing to have some growing pains in the NFL, but he wouldn't continue to get these contracts if people didn't know how good he could potentially be. Another thing is the Steelers had a plethora of good wide receivers over the last 6, 7, 8 years, right? So it's not like they haven't had weapons. So once again, people that have been saying that Mason Rudolph is not an adequate NFL guy, yada, 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 it's nonsense. It's been nonsense the whole time. He hasn't got the opportunity, in my opinion, to be able to showcase what he can do. And if you've seen the preseason thus far for the Steelers, they're doing schemes a little bit different for all three quarterbacks. Not all three quarterbacks are doing the exact same thing. But Mason Rudolph is a deep ball guy who has not been allowed to throw the deep ball with the Steelers. And the deep balls he typically does throw are productive. It's the dink and dunk crap that has been pushed on him alongside this, the Myles Garrett getting hit with his own helmet crap. It's still, there's never been anybody in his almost 30 years of life that has claimed Mason Rudolph says racist stuff, has racist tendencies at any point in time. So Myles Garrett is completely full of crap because even now, this much longer later, you're still not hearing people say that Mason was throwing slurs. His O-lineman, the other defensive linemen that were on the field right next to Myles Garrett is a clown. And that is partially what Mason Rudolph is remembered for, is the guy that got hit with his own helmet. It's ridiculous. But maybe this is his interviewing time right now. What he does in this preseason maybe is a job interview. And if that's the case, I'm fine with it. Is there 32 quarterbacks in the country, in the NFL, that are better than Mason Rudolph? I don't think so. He might be 30th, 31st, 32nd. Okay, cool. I can buy that. But it's the same thing as when people used to try to say that, there's not 32 quarterbacks better than Colin Kaepernick, or there's not 32 quarterbacks better than Cam Newton. Those guys come with a whole bunch of other baggage and crap that has nothing to do with the game of football. Mason Rudolph has none of that, except for the Myles Garrett thing. And one dude saying that he said some crap. One dude. The guy who acted like a 7-year-old schoolgirl. Whatever. It is what it is. I'm happy that Mason's getting some shine now. I'm very happy, obviously, for Jaylen Warren. And, there's even talk around the Steelers writers that by Halloween, a lot of people think that Jaylen Warren will be the starter and not the number 2 behind Najee Harris. Regardless, he's going to get a significant amount of touches. He's going to get his carries. He's going to get ample opportunity to prove whether he's the guy or not. And so I'm still going to watch some Steelers games, even though I'm very upset with the whole way they've treated Mason Rudolph. He deserves none of it. They don't deserve to have him, but they do. So this is the world that we live in, and I guess I can learn to be okay with it. What I haven't learned to be okay with is my hair situation. If you notice, I'm wearing a hat 24/7. So I'm excited before we jump into my personal top 3 Denver Broncos to talk about Nutrafol. Guys, this is a product that is going to help you if you have hair thinning or just weakened hair in general. You don't have to choose between better health and better hair anymore. There's no better thing on the market than Nutrafol. It's going to help you provide whole body health as opposed to just something for hair. If we all think that losing our hair is inevitable, well, do yourself a favor and take control while you can. The hair's not coming back unless you do something about it. Nutrafol is a science-backed hair growth supplement for men. Guys, did we know that 80% of dudes will experience hair thinning in their lifetime, right? All right, it's fairly normal, but it don't have to be your fate because you can get hooked up today with Nutrafol. It is the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement, and it's clinically shown to improve hair growth, give visible thickness, and visible scalp coverage. Go to Nutrafol.com/men to take their hair health wellness quiz. Identify the causes of your thinning hair, and Nutrafol will get you your personalized plan for better hair health through the whole body wellness system. It's going to work for you, right? The clinical studies say 84% of men showed improved hair in the first 6 months of taking Nutrafol. So get your way going here towards your first step of visibly thicker, healthier hair. For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off the first month subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com/men and enter the promo code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word. Go there now. Find out why over 4,000 healthcare professionals have recommended Nutrafol for healthier hair. Nutrafol.com/men, spelled Nutrafol.com/men, and enter the promo code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word. Nutrafol.com/men, promo code LOCKEDONCollege. It doesn't have to be your fate, gentlemen. All right, so now we get to hop into what I think is a pretty fun segment. And I live in Colorado. What brought this up is, my son took a few years off from football, focused on baseball, done a phenomenal job, decided to jump back into football after taking a few years off. And he's doing some work, right? So he was one of the 20 sophomores chosen from the football team to go up to Denver Broncos facility to watch them practice tomorrow. And of course, that is a really cool moment for him. I'm excited. I'm a little jealous, a little envious. There was never a point in my high school where I ever got to go watch an NFL team do work. But nonetheless, it'll be pretty cool. It'll be pretty fun. I'm excited. But then it got me thinking, right? Because he's a big fan of Tatum Bell. We have conversations about Tatum Bell on an often basis. By the way, that's a little bit of a segue. We're going to have Tatum Bell on this network again the 22nd, and we're going to discuss the running back situation, offensive line situation, all that fun stuff about Oklahoma State's fall. But okay, so for me, we're just going to go ahead and kick this off. The top 3 Denver Broncos for me, #1, got to be Darrent Williams. Got to be Darrent Williams. Darrent Williams was somebody that's, primarily known for his life being cut too short, because it was. New Year's, January 1st, 2007, he was gunned down in a drive-by that, ended his life very early on. And his process to Oklahoma State, it's like very many. As a senior in high school around the Fort Worth area, he was a defensive most valuable player in 7A. He had 5 picks, several long returns. As a punt returner, he was utilized and averaged over 30 yards per return in high school. But for some reason, he wasn't very highly recruited. He didn't get a lot of attention. So his only offers were TCU, Louisiana Tech, and O State. And it was reported that he was the very last signature for Oklahoma State in that 2001 class after an OSU coach's wife urged her husband to reevaluate this kid. Ended up working out. Comes to Oklahoma State. Guys, a lot of people remember him for what he did at Oklahoma State, which is why this is going to be pertinent, obviously. But he became a starter pretty much immediately, right? Very early on, you knew this was going to be a guy that was going to be a massive weapon for Oklahoma State. Him running a 4.3 40 probably helped a little bit. But, when he comes in and immediately has interceptions, immediately has pick sixes, and immediately gets his name on the board for a hard-nosed Les Miles squad, you knew it was probably going to work out pretty well for him. He finished his college career tied for first all-time in Division I football for career interception returns for touchdowns. He's number 9 all-time in O-State single-season interceptions. He's number 2 all-time O-State history in single-game pass breakups. He holds the number 1 and number 2 spot for 2 different seasons in single-season pass breakups, and he's number 2 in career pass breakups in Oklahoma State history. And his life was, in fact, cut short. Nobody got to see what he could end up being. But on top of all of those accolades, he's also number 1 in 2003 in Big 12 punt return yards per return. He was number 1 in the Big 12 in 2004 in punt return for touchdowns. He's number 8 in the history of the Big 12 for punt return touchdowns. Number 17 in the history of the Big 12 for picks. Number 3 in the history of the Big 12 for interception return yards. He holds the number 1 spot in Big 12 in 2001 for interceptions returned for touchdowns. He holds the number 1 spot in 2003. He's number 3 in the NCAA all-time in interception return touchdowns. And number 1 in the Big 12. He would have been a legend. At the time, he comes in and he starts immediately as a second-round draft pick by the Denver Broncos, and he's starting opposite of Champ Bailey in the very get-go. He was the 56th overall pick in the 2005 NFL draft by the Broncos. And immediately, his presence was felt. Darrent Williams is, again, probably one of the most forgotten about Cowboys. It is possible. And he's somebody that even Champ Bailey said would have been an all-pro guy. He had multiple returns for touchdowns. He was the punt returner for the Broncos for 2 years. It would have been a great. But his life was ended short. Sucks. But he needs to be remembered for the bad mamma jamma that he was. All right, moving on. Number 2, I think just body of work's got to be Keith Burns. Keith Burns was a 1990 graduate of T.C. Williams High School, which is pretty famous, in Alexandria, Virginia. He went to Navarro Junior College in Texas. He was a first-team JUCO All-American. And then he comes to Oklahoma State in 1992 and immediately has an impact. First year with the Cowboys, has 126 tackles, 102 of those being solo, 5 sacks, 3 forced fumbles. He was voted captain of the team in just 4 games in to the year and became the Big 8 Conference's defensive newcomer of the year. Coming into his final season, he was an All-American on a lot of boards. He was the number 1 ranked inside linebacker by Sporting News. And he made the most of it. He's number 2 all-time in Oklahoma State history and single-game tackles with 23 in 1992 against Colorado, right? See, we get to mesh this thing up. And he's also tied for second all-time in Oklahoma State history, single-game tackles for loss. The dude was on a mission, and when you spend 13 years in the NFL, I'd say you were pretty successful. 11 of those being with the Broncos. Guys, he had 197 games posted as a professional. 77 career stops. He had some sacks, he had some picks, he had some pass breakups, he had some forced fumbles. Won 2 Super Bowls with the Denver Broncos. Got to play a little bit as a Chicago Bear and a little bit as a Tampa Bay Buccaneer, but 11 years with the Broncos, 2 Super Bowls, and he was a very important part of that team, whether it be special teams, whether it be a linebacker, a reserve role, it didn't matter. And he was good enough to stick around for that daggone long. He's still coaching. He's still in the college game. So shout out to him, Keith Burns being number 2 for me. Number 1, our guy, Tatum Bell. Yes, he's talked about it on this program before, and we'll have him on again here in a little over a week. So we can chop it up with him about this right here. But yeah, guys, he was my guy when he was with the Broncos. I love watching those teams. John Elway, Shannon Sharp, right? They were really fun to watch. And the dude comes to Oklahoma State after, being one of the fastest guys in America. He was a Texas top 100 player, and he chose Oklahoma State over Texas and OU and Auburn, whoever you could physically possibly think of. He pretty much had an offer from them. And then he comes to Oklahoma State, and he's fourth all-time leading rusher in the history. He is fourth all-time in history with touchdowns. As a true freshman, he was already rushing the ball. And he got to be with some other NFL guys while he was at Oklahoma State. When you rush for 4,285 yards in Oklahoma State lore, you're always going to hold a high place. You're always going to be stacked up there, of course. And then you get drafted in the second round, kind of like our guy Darrent with the Denver Broncos. Darrent was second rounder. Tatum Bell was the 41st overall pick. And, he went to Oklahoma. He went to Denver, and he led the AFC in all rookie running backs. In 2005, he was part of that two-headed monster with Mike Anderson. He almost had 1,000 yards, just shy of 1,000 yards, and ran for 5.3 yards a carry in the NFL. And then 2006 was kind of his coming out season, where he rushed for over 1,000 yards as a Denver Bronco. Went on to be a Detroit Lion after that. Pretty coveted guy. Had some stuff kind of pop up, and he got mixed up and messing with some dude's luggage at the airport, which he talked about on this show. So I'm not going to go super deep into that. But, he came back to the Denver Broncos because they realized, what they were missing and not having Tatum Bell. And then he tries his hand in UFL football, and he ran for 365 yards in one game, and which is still the UFL records to this day. So those are my three top Denver Broncos. Obviously, I may have missed some, may have missed somebody, something. So feel free to hop in and let me know what I missed, what I could have added, what I could have got right. Any other Broncos that come to mind, hammer away in the comment section. Guys, like it if you like the daggone thing. Dislike it if you don't. Let me know why. Share it. Subscribe. Let's. We've got rookie numbers. We need to pump these numbers. I'm just kidding. We're doing really well, but it's never enough, is it? It's never enough till you claim all of the top spots. So let's keep this thing rocking and rolling. And then finally, we get to segment number 3, and it is, of course, Coach Kenny Gajewski. He had some statements the other day, and I, for one, love them. It was pretty much in regards to our former ace pitcher, Kelly Maxwell, leaving for our big rival up the road in the OU Sooners. And if you notice, guys, there was not a big outcry when Trace Ford went to OU. Sucks, dumb. I mean, from a medical standpoint, I get the argument, but not that big of a deal because we had Colin Oliver. When we talk about Lexi Keys, okay, not a big deal, right? You saw last year that J.C. Hewitt was bringing a bunch of Okies back to kind of rebuild the Cowgirl basketball team from within. So if Lexi wants to go be a Sooner, fine. We don't give a hoot, right? You saw we did a pitcher, Kale Davis and Ben Abrams swap for swap, OU to Stillwater and Oklahoma State to OU. We got the better end of that bargain. So it begs the question. Does this not make this year's Bedlam a little bit more enticing, a little bit more exciting? I think it does. You're telling me as an Oklahoma State Cowgirl fan, you're not going to be a little bit more pumped up to watch Bedlam softball this year than you were last year or even the year prior? If you're not a Cowgirl basketball fanatic, are you not going to be a little bit more jazzed up whenever you see us take the floor and you do see Lexi Keys out there? In football, the last Bedlam, at least for the next 8 to 10 years, for sure, is this season in Stillwater, Oklahoma. You don't think that everybody in the country wants to see us get that dub so we can point and laugh at Trace Ford's decision, so we can sit and laugh at Kelly Maxwell's decision, so we can sit and laugh at Lexi Keys' decision? We already got to laugh at Kale Davis. We're pretty good as far as depth is concerned. Losing Kelly Maxwell, yeah, that sucks. It does. But just like Coach Kenny Gajewski said, and a couple direct quotes from him, my only disappointment for Kelly is that she went to OU because now she's lost everything here that she's ever done in Stillwater. Yeah. Right? As long as he's at Oklahoma State, it's going to be hard for her to just swing back around and be part of the program. Ain't going to happen, Captain, nor shouldn't. And this is awesome. This is phenomenal to hear from Coach Kenny Gajewski because, guys, he's a Sooner. He won a national title with OU's baseball team in 1994. Then he worked for OU's baseball softball department, right? Did some landscaping. He stayed within Norman, Oklahoma for quite some time. He is obviously very passionate about this, and it's stuff like this that may allow him to make sure he retires in Stillwater. This is great. This is great for the publicity. This is great for Coach Kenny Gajewski. This is great for Oklahoma State. This is a drawing a line in the stand, and I love it. My favorite quote from Coach Kenny Gajewski, and we've heard Gundy say something like this, there are layers that equal reasons for people to leave. So if there's some layers that equal some things that make sense, like the Trace Ford situation from a medical perspective, okay, cool. But that's not always what it is. So when Coach Kenny Gajewski says, and I quote, "But if you don't want to be here, go away. I don't want you here if you don't want to be here and you don't want to wear this logo and represent this school." Gundy says, we have a logo too. Coach Kenny Gajewski says, I don't want you here if you don't want to rock the orange and black proudly. And I think it's things like this that make us, Oklahoma State fans, just a little bit different. There's a lot of fan bases that say that. I get it. There's a lot of fan bases that say they bleed things. I get it. But this year is going to be better. It is going to be more exciting. There is going to be better storylines. It's not just because they're leaving for the SEC this time. I cannot wait for football season to start. What are we, 18 days away from Oklahoma State football officially kicking off? And yeah, it's Central Arkansas, but Central Arkansas does have a 6'6", 245-pound defensive end that runs a 4.45 40. So our tackles are going to get tested, our fullbacks, our tight ends. There's going to be enough tests to be excited about. But the last Bedlam in Stillwater, in Boone Pickens Stadium, on Lewis Field, with Trace Ford on the other sidelines. All right. I love it. Bedlam basketball twice with J.C. Hoyt at the helm and Lexi Keys on the other sideline. I love it. Bedlam baseball, do we get to beat down Kale Davis's face once again? Sure. If so, I love it. And then softball, the mighty oak tree that is OU Sooner softball. We're all appreciative for what Kelly Maxwell was able to do as a Cowgirl. We're all appreciative of the time and the effort she put in. I do think that we could have managed her a little bit better last season, which could have helped with this decision. But at the end of the day, this one is different. Because she did go have a press conference halfway in the middle of the season and talk about how she was coming back. And then didn't. So it is different. It hits different because it is different. Trace Ford, Lexi Keys, Kale Davis, they didn't all come out and say, I would like to announce I'm going to take my next year eligibility to come back and play again, just to leave. For the one school in America you don't want them going to. Coach Kenny Gajewski should be fired up, and so should you. I am. I'm fired up for a lot of things. But the storylines for Bedlam 2023 are different. They are better. They are funner. It's going to make this season all that much better. Every W we get in Bedlam, it's going to be savory. It's going to be sweeter. And maybe, just maybe, once we do curb stomp everybody, People will stop taking the 71-mile trip to the dark side. It's dumb. Don't like it. Don't get it. I'm over it. I'm over it. All right, y'all. That's all we're going to have for this one. As always, thank you for tuning in. To make this your first listen here on Locked On Oklahoma State. You could be anywhere. I love that you come here. God bless. Go Pokes. And until the next one, you know the drill. Later, Tatum.